I think I had left off with pretty much telling you quite a bit about Nappy Gunzows. So during one of my husband's phone conversations with Nappy, Nappy tells my husband that Paul Brantley from the Pawtucket Police Department had reached out to Stacy Veroni. And my husband questions, well, she's from the Attorney General's office. So, so Paul Brantley reached out to Stacy Veroni. A lot of things happened. And I don't have the dates, but they're all in the medical examiner's notes of when we went down. And so we had gone down to the medical examiner's office a couple of times. Actually, I think it was like 3. I believe it was 3 times. Besides being in communication with them. So, we had gone down to the medical examiner's office because we wanted to see the file. So, we went and we met with Carol Roby. And we went into a room and she let us view everything but pictures. And we read through. And this is where we saw in writing Rafael Perez's statement to Robinson. Robinson works for the medical examiner's office. And I was reading the statement that Perez had given, and I told Carol Roby, I need this. These are lies. And she said, those are our internal notes. And I said, they're notes about my son that are lies. And she, because she was making us some copies of some things. And she would not make a copy of that. So at one point, she left the room and we took pictures of those internal notes. And this is a very important part of how things pretty much developed. But anyway, I'm going to get back to pretty much Nappy. And so we're not happy with at one point Frank Milos, because he's pretty much an idiot, we wanted the police report. And he made us jump through hoops. So we had gone, trying to think of how. I'll get back to Bob DeSilva. He's the crazy part of this. Bob DeSilva is actually the East Providence mayor. So anyway, Frank Milos had released to us the police report. And I had been going to everybody and, this is wrong, this is wrong. What are we going to do? What is going on? So we started looking at the medical examiner's paperwork a little bit deeper. But I don't want to skip the next part. So Nappy, completed his internal affairs investigation, and now I ask for a copy of it because now I want to see it. So Frank Milos, because he had released to us the police report, and we knew the names. Of course, we knew the names. Now he wasn't going to let us have the internal affairs investigation because we could match it up. So I put in my very first complaint to the Attorney General's office because Frank Milos isn't releasing the internal affairs investigation. So I believe her name was Marlena Lopes. Anyway, so now we sit with Paul Caterina. Paul Caterina has now joined. And he meets with us. And we're not happy. And Paul says to us, well, the chief told me that he wanted me to meet with you and your family to see if we could fix some things. And explain some things. And at the end of the meeting, I said to him, so what are you going to report back to Paul King? And he says, I'm going to let him know that you're not happy. Well, no, not one thing was done correct. Why would we be happy? Why would we be happy? We're just gonna keep this going. Just keep it going. So I believe that was, Michael remembers it as being Halloween. So let's say it's October. Now, I'm still trying to get things fixed. And we now realize that when we were gathering things, when we were preparing clothes for Joseph, and I wasn't going to get into the week before Joseph died, but this is a little bit of it. Joseph had gotten a new pair of shoes, sneakers, and a bottle of cologne the weekend before he died. I still have the box. I still have the box that the shoes came in. Still have it. So when Joseph passed away, and I had seen him in the new shoes the day before he died, I figured that the medical examiner's office had his sneakers. So we're looking at the paperwork, and no sneakers are mentioned. No socks are mentioned. And the weekend, that Joseph passed away, we were looking for his keys. We figured his keys were on him in his pocket. But he always had a spare set of keys on a key ring, on a key holder at the back door. And I can go into the whole thing of why there always had to be a spare set of keys hanging on that key holder, but I won't. So I had asked my brother to take the car and just get it out of the driveway. And we went for the keys and we couldn't find the keys. The spare set of keys were gone. They were gone. So looking at the inventory of clothing and things like that, and seeing his sneakers not listed, and I didn't have his clothes. His clothes were given to my brother. His clothing, his hat, and things like that were at the medical examiner's office were in a bag. And no sneakers were mentioned. So I called my brother and I said, that bag? And he says, I can't open it. And I said, I understand that. But I just need you to go and grab that bag and feel the outside of the bag and tell me if Joseph's sneakers are in there. So we did. And he said, no, they're not. So I'm not gonna do an emotional thing here. But anyway, so we have Major Katerina on the scene here with, he's going to report back to Paul King. That was October. I was dealing with Frank Milos, with his craziness. And I was also dealing with Tony Pyrus. Now, Tony Pyrus is going to be very important in this situation. Very. So, and I apologize. Today is a very difficult day for me with breathing. And I'm going to cough probably a lot. But anyway. I think I'll stop here. Before we bring Tony Pyrus to the floor.